Hello guys, welcome back to a third episode of Shraga Debunks. My name is Shraga, and this is a social media segment where I take some anti-Jewish or anti-Zionist propaganda and I debunk it. Today I'm going to be debunking the Free Palestine claim that everyone always says. It's just all over the place, it's really annoying, so let's talk about it. Free Palestine, Free Palestine, Free Palestine, it's all over the place. What does it mean? Well, there's a few people trying to make different claims. First of all, there's the guys trying to say that Israel is an occupational force in mandatory Palestine. Palestine used to be this area of land, and Israel is occupying it. They want all of Israel out of all of what used to be the Palestine mandate. These guys want there to be no state of Israel. Next, there are the guys that are saying, well, just free the Palestinian people, right? The Palestinian people, the Arabs living here, they're oppressed. Except in Israel, Arabs have more rights than they do in any Arab country. They want Palestinians to have a state. That's what they're after here. They're saying, let's give Palestinian state and have an Israel state on the side. That's what some of them say. So let's get to it. Why don't the Palestinians have a state? In my opinion, the best way to respond to Free Palestine as an argument is to say, well, we've tried multiple times. 7 times as of 2021. In 1937, there was the Peel Commission, in which 80% of the land was allocated for the Arabs, 17% for the Jews, and 3% was international Jerusalem. In 1948, there was the UN Partition Plan, in which 56% of the land, mostly desert, went to the Jews, and 3% international Jerusalem, and the rest went to the Arabs. In 1967, after the Six-Day War, the Israeli cabinet unanimously voted to return all of the land taken, except for the West Bank, for which they were going to open negotiations, to the previous owners. This included the Gaza Strip, the Sinai Peninsula, and the Golan Heights. They were going to return all of it, and yet none of it happened because the Arab League, they met in Sudan, and they announced 3 no's. No peace with Israel, no recognition of Israel, and no negotiations with Israel. This means no Arab state, no Arab entity can even admit that Israel exists. And so negotiations were flawed and pointless afterwards. In the year 2000, President Bill Clinton of the US invited Yasser Arafat and Ehud Barak to join him in Camp David for a peace summit in order to negotiate a Palestinian state and an Israeli state. Israel already existed at the time. In this summit, Yasser Arafat was offered 92% of the West Bank, and in the words of Bill Clinton, you've been here 14 days and you have said no to everything. In the year 2008, Ehud Olmert and Mahmoud Abbas met in order to negotiate another Palestinian state. In this negotiation, Abbas was offered a full 93.7% of the West Bank along with land swaps for the remainder. He said no, and no more Palestinian state. In 2019, President Donald Trump of the US again offered a Palestinian state with 70% of the West Bank and a bunch of the desert given to them as well. Unfortunately, again, Palestinians said no. In the year 2005, Ariel Sharon, the Prime Minister of Israel, completely withdrew all Israeli presence from the Gaza Strip, completely just ignoring it, leaving it out of Israel's sovereignty, removing citizens and army entirely from the Gaza Strip. Instead of occupying it and creating a Palestinian state, Hamas decided to use it as a staging ground for missiles, terror tunnels, and other terrorist attacks. This is another state that they just rejected the ability of creating. They ignored the ability to create this state, and that's what happened. No Palestinian state. The idea of Free Palestine isn't actually going for Free Palestine, but it makes it sound like they're trying to be humanitarian and trying to be helpful and trying to be, look, these poor Palestinians, they're suffering, look at them. Okay, but they ignore the fact why they're suffering, and they ignore the fact that Israel is trying to prevent them from suffering. We've offered them a state 7 times as of 2021, as I said earlier, and they just don't want it. They don't take the state. Well guys, I hope I've effectively debunked the Free Palestine myth, and if you have any other ideas for anything you'd like me to debunk, write it in the comments down below, and as always, I'm Israel Chai.